Sam.
What? What?
Yep. I've been thinking about it.
Ghost. The pottery scene. Unchained melody. Whoopi Goldberg talking to the dead. You think you know this movie inside and out. You've watched it a dozen times, cried at the ending every single time, and you can probably quote the best lines without even thinking. But what if I told you there are 20 details hiding in plain sight that completely change how you see Sam and Molly's love story, from Patrick Swayze's real-life injury that made it into the final cut, to the one line Demi Moore refused to say no matter how much the director begged, to the subway ghost who wasn't supposed to be in the movie at all and nearly got cut from every scene he appears in, details that the cast kept secret for decades. Moments that were pure accident but became the most memorable parts of the film, and behind-the-scenes drama that almost destroyed the entire production. These are 20 hidden details you completely missed in Ghost. If you love classic romance movies and the stories behind them, hit subscribe. I break down the secrets, the scandals, and the magic that Hollywood doesn't want you to notice. Every week, I go deep into the films that defined romance on screen. Now, let's get into it. Number 20, the pottery scene wasn't in the original script at all. That iconic moment where Sam and Molly create art together while covered in clay, the scene that became the most famous image of the entire film, was added during rewrites because the director felt the movie needed a scene showing their physical chemistry without dialogue. He wanted something sensual but not explicit, romantic but not cheesy. The original script jumped from their first kiss straight to them waking up together, and test readers said it felt too abrupt. They needed to see the couple connecting on a deeper level. The song Unchained Melody wasn't chosen until post-production, which is wild when you think about how inseparable that song and that scene have become. Originally, the scene was supposed to be completely silent, with just the sound of their breathing and the pottery wheel spinning. But when editor Walter Murch played the Righteous Brothers track over the rough cut, everyone in the room knew they'd found something special. The scene was shot in one brutal 14-hour day, and Demi Moore later admitted in interviews that her hands were bleeding by the end of it because the clay dried out her skin so badly. She had to soak them in ice water between takes. Patrick Swayze's hands were also raw, but he refused to complain because he didn't want Moore to feel alone in her pain. That's the kind of partnership they built during filming. Number 19. Patrick Swayze did his own stunts for the subway fight scene, and there's one moment that wasn't planned at all. When Sam gets thrown against the subway car, and you see him grimace in real pain, that's because Swayze actually hit his head on the metal bar with full force. The stunt coordinator had positioned a pad there, but it shifted during the take. The director kept that specific take because the rawness felt authentic in a way that a performed reaction never could. You can see in Swayze's eyes that he's genuinely dazed for a split second. Swayze refused medical attention until they finished the entire sequence, which took another 6 hours to complete. He had a concussion, but didn't tell anyone on set until 3 days later, when his wife insisted he see a doctor after noticing he was forgetting conversations. That's the level of commitment he brought to every single scene. The man was a professional dancer who understood his body better than most athletes, and he pushed himself to the absolute limit. The subway fight choreography took 2 weeks to rehearse, and Swayze participated in every session, even though the studio had hired a stunt double specifically for that sequence. He told the director that Sam's rage needed to come from him, not from someone else's body. Number 18. Whoopi Goldberg didn't want the role of Oda Mae Brown at all. She thought the character was too stereotypical and almost turned it down 3 separate times. The casting director kept calling her back, and Goldberg kept saying no. What finally changed her mind was a conversation with her daughter, who was 13 at the time. Her daughter told her that playing a fake psychic who becomes real would actually subvert the stereotype instead of reinforcing it, and that showing a Black woman as the moral center of a major Hollywood film mattered more than avoiding a potentially problematic character. Goldberg accepted the role on one condition that she made non-negotiable. She wanted to improvise at least 30% of her dialogue because she didn't trust that a white screenwriter could write authentic dialogue for a black woman from Queens. If you watch closely, many of Oda Mae's funniest lines weren't in the script at all. The moment where she tells her sisters to get out of her apartment and calls them freeloaders, pure Whoopi. The scene where she's arguing with Sam about taking the money to the nuns and says she's never liked nuns, that was improvised on the spot. Goldberg brought a warmth and authenticity to the character that transformed what could have been a racist caricature into one of the most beloved performances of her entire career. Number 17. The movie was supposed to end completely differently, and it would have ruined everything. In the original screenplay, Sam doesn't get to say goodbye to Molly at all. He simply fades away after defeating Carl, and Molly never knows he was there protecting her. She's left alone in her apartment with no closure, no final words, no confirmation that love survives death. Test audiences absolutely hated it. They felt emotionally cheated after investing 2 hours in the love story. People were walking out of test screenings angry, saying they felt manipulated. The studio panicked and ordered immediate reshoots, which created a massive budget problem because they'd already wrapped production. The now famous final scene where Sam appears in the light and tells Molly he loves her was written in just 48 hours by the screenwriter locked in a hotel room with the director. They knew they had one shot to get it right. The scene was filmed on a soundstage with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, and both actors said it was the most emotionally draining day of their lives. Moore couldn't stop crying between takes. Swayze kept asking to do it again because he felt like he wasn't capturing the magnitude of the moment. It's now considered one of the most romantic endings in cinema history, and it almost didn't exist. The studio almost released a version of Ghost where love doesn't win. Number 16. Vincent Schiavelli, the actor who played the subway ghost, was only supposed to be in one single scene. His character was meant to teach Sam how to move objects and then disappear from the story completely. But Schiavelli's performance was so magnetic and unexpected that the director kept bringing him back. Every single subway ghost scene after the first one was added during production because the crew loved watching him work. The actor had a rare genetic condition called Marfan syndrome that gave him distinctive facial features, and he'd spent his entire career playing creepy or unsettling characters. But he brought such dark humor and unexpected vulnerability to the subway ghost that audiences fell in love with him. Schiavelli later said in interviews that Ghost was his favorite role despite having less than 8 minutes of screen time, because he got to play a character who was terrifying and funny and tragic all at the same time. He improvised the line about getting pushed in front of a train, drawing from his own fear of the New York subway system. The director loved it so much that he built an entire backstory around that one improvised detail. Schiavelli died in 2005, but that subway ghost performance remains one of the most memorable supporting roles in film history. Number 15. Demi Moore's haircut became a massive cultural phenomenon that launched 1,000 imitations, but it was actually a wig. Moore had already cut her hair extremely short for another role before Ghost started filming, so the production team had to create a custom wig that matched her previous longer style perfectly. The wig cost $42,000, which was an insane amount of money in 1990 and took 6 weeks to make by a team of specialists in Los Angeles. Every single hair was individually placed to create the most natural look possible. Moore absolutely hated wearing it. In interviews years later, she said it gave her terrible headaches and felt like her scalp was suffocating under hot lights. She had to wear it for 12 to 14 hours a day during filming, and by the end of each day she said she wanted to rip it off and throw it in the garbage. But that iconic look launched one of the most requested hairstyles of 1990 and 1991. Hair salons across America reported that women were bringing in photos of Demi Moore from Ghost and asking for the exact same cut. The style became known as the Ghost in salon terminology. Moore herself never wore her hair that way in real life again. Number 14. The line "ditto" wasn't in the script, and it became one of the most quoted movie lines of all time by complete accident. Patrick Swayze ad-libbed it during rehearsals as a placeholder because he thought Sam saying, "I love you," back to Molly felt too conventional and predictable for the character he was building. He wanted something that felt more masculine and emotionally guarded. The director told him to keep it for the actual take thinking they'd replace it in post-production with something more traditionally romantic. But when they showed the rough cut to test audiences, that moment got the biggest emotional response of the entire film. Women in the test screenings said the word ditto felt more intimate than I love you, because it required Molly to interpret it, to understand Sam on a deeper level. The word ditto became so permanently associated with the movie that Swayze said he heard it everywhere he went for years afterward. Fans would shout it at him on the street. People would whisper it to him in restaurants. He got letters from couples who used ditto as their secret code for I love you because of his performance. What started as a throwaway placeholder became one of the most romantic moments in cinema. Number 13. Tony Goldwyn, who played the villain Carl with such chilling perfection, was originally auditioning for the role of Sam. He read for the lead part 3 separate times and kept getting callbacks from the casting director. But during his final audition, after he'd already prepared extensively for Sam's emotional scenes, the casting director asked him to read Carl's lines just to see his range. Goldwyn's portrayal of the charming best friend, who's secretly a cold-blooded murderer, was so genuinely chilling that they offered him the villain role on the spot. He later admitted in interviews that he was devastated at first because he desperately wanted to be the romantic lead opposite Demi Moore. He'd imagined himself in the pottery scene, in the final goodbye, in all those iconic moments. But playing Carl ended up being the best career move he ever made, because it showed Hollywood he had range beyond just being a handsome face. The moment where Carl realizes Sam is a ghost and the fear crosses his face, that was Goldwyn channeling his own fear of being typecast. He brought real vulnerability to a character who could have been a one-dimensional villain, and it made Carl one of the most believable antagonists of the early 90s. Number 12. The subway scenes were filmed in an actual abandoned New York City subway station at 2 in the morning, and the production didn't have full permits for some of the shots. They had to work incredibly quickly before transit authority officers showed up to shut them down. The location was a real decommissioned station that hadn't seen passengers in over 20 years, and it was genuinely creepy. The crew reported hearing strange sounds and seeing shadows that weren't explainable, which freaked everyone out considering they were making a movie about ghosts. There's one wide shot where you can see a real subway train passing in the background, and that wasn't planned at all. A train came through the adjacent tunnel while they were filming, and the director decided to keep rolling because the authenticity was perfect. The actors had to shout their lines over the noise of metal screeching against metal. If you listen closely during that sequence with good headphones, you can hear the authentic screech of the subway system that the sound team couldn't possibly recreate in a studio. Patrick Swayze later said filming in that abandoned station at night was one of the most unsettling experiences of his career, and he'd done horror movies before. The atmosphere added a layer of genuine dread to those scenes that you can feel on screen. Number 11. The bank robbery scene and Carl's betrayal were based on a real unsolved murder case. The screenwriter read about a financial analyst who discovered his best friend was embezzling money through elaborate wire transfers and ended up dead in what the police ruled as a random mugging. The case was never solved, and the best friend was never charged despite being the obvious suspect. The screenwriter changed enough details to avoid potential lawsuits, but the core emotional betrayal came directly from that true story. He never revealed which city it happened in or what year, keeping the real victim's identity protected, but he confirmed in multiple interviews that Carl's character was inspired by a real person who got away with murder. The detail about using wire transfers to move money, that came from the real case. The specific way Carl manipulates the banking system, based on actual fraud techniques that the screenwriter researched extensively. He spent 3 months interviewing forensic accountants to make sure the money laundering plot was realistic. Some critics initially thought the banking subplot was too complicated for a romance film, but the screenwriter insisted on keeping it because he felt he owed it to the real victim to show how sophisticated and calculated this kind of betrayal actually is. Number 10. Demi Moore refused to film the scene where Molly discovers Sam's body, and she threatened to walk off the production if the director didn't change it. The original script had Molly finding Sam dead in the alley, covered in blood, his eyes still open. It was written as a brutal, graphic moment designed to shock the audience. Moore argued passionately that it was too traumatic and would make the audience hate the movie instead of engaging with it emotionally. She said that showing Molly discover the body would turn the film into a horror movie instead of a love story, and she hadn't signed up to make a horror movie. The director initially refused to budge, saying the visual was necessary to establish stakes. They had a massive argument on set that delayed filming for an entire day. Moore stood her ground and said she would rather break her contract and face legal consequences than film that scene. The director finally compromised by having Molly learn about Sam's death from the police instead of discovering it herself, which is what you see in the final film. Moore later said in interviews that standing up to the director on that specific point was the right call because it allowed Molly to stay sympathetic instead of becoming a grief-stricken mess that audiences couldn't emotionally connect with. The police notification scene is heartbreaking but not traumatizing, and that distinction matters. Number 9. The pennies in the door scene has a hidden meaning that most viewers completely miss. When Sam learns to move the penny up the door as a ghost, teaching himself to interact with the physical world again, he's actually repeating something his father taught him as a child. There's a deleted scene that was cut from the final film that shows a flashback of young Sam, maybe 8 or 9 years old, learning a magic trick from his dad involving a sliding coin. The father is teaching him about focus and concentration, about believing something is possible even when it seems impossible. The director cut the flashback for pacing reasons, feeling it slowed down the momentum too much, but he left the penny moment in because it worked as a standalone beat. Patrick Swayze knew about the deleted backstory because he'd filmed it, and he played the penny scene with all that emotional weight and history. That's why his face shows so much concentration and memory when he's moving that penny. He's not just moving a coin up a door, he's reconnecting with his father, accessing a childhood lesson about persistence and belief. It's a master class in acting because Swayze is performing a scene within a scene that the audience can't even see. Watch his eyes during that moment and you can see him remembering something precious. Number 8. Whoopi Goldberg won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Oda Mae Brown, but she almost wasn't submitted for consideration at all. The studio wanted to campaign her in the Best Actress category because her screen time was substantial enough to qualify, and they thought she had a better shot at winning in the lead category. Goldberg herself insisted firmly on being submitted for supporting actress because she felt Demi Moore carried the true emotional weight of the film and deserved the lead actress spotlight, even though Moore's performance wasn't getting the same critical attention. It was an incredibly generous move in an industry where actors usually fight to be considered in the lead categories. Moore wasn't nominated at all, which Goldberg said broke her heart. Goldberg's Oscar win was historic. It made her the first Black woman to win an Academy Award in over 50 years, and only the second Black woman ever at that time. The first was Hattie McDaniel for Gone with the Wind in 1939. Think about that gap. 51 years between wins. Goldberg's acceptance speech was emotional and powerful, and she dedicated the award to all the Black actresses who came before her and never got the recognition they deserved. The win transformed her career and proved that comedy performances could be taken seriously by the Academy. Number 7. The shadowy demons that drag the villains to hell were added in post-production, and they created a massive technical challenge. The original plan was for bad guys to simply disappear into darkness with no visual representation of where they were going. But test audiences wanted concrete visual confirmation that evil was being punished. They wanted to see justice happen on screen. The special effects team had only 6 weeks to create the demon sequence from scratch, which was considered absolutely impossible with early 1990s technology. Most effects houses said it couldn't be done in that time frame. They ended up using a combination of practical puppetry with actual physical demon figures controlled by puppeteers and early CGI technology that was cutting edge at the time. This made Ghost one of the first mainstream Hollywood films to successfully blend both practical and digital effects in the same sequence. The screaming sounds the demons make are actually slowed down and pitch-shifted recordings of pigs squealing, which the sound designer discovered by accident while experimenting with animal sounds. He'd been trying everything from human screams to synthesized sounds, and nothing felt otherworldly enough. The pig squeals, when processed correctly, created this unholy sound that made test audiences physically uncomfortable. The demon sequence cost $800,000 to produce and nearly didn't make it into the film because of budget concerns. Number 6. Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore had absolutely zero chemistry during the first week of filming, and it was causing serious problems. The director was genuinely panicking because their scenes together felt wooden, forced, and completely unconvincing. You could see both actors trying too hard, overcompensating for the lack of natural connection. The director called a 2-day break and told them to spend time together off-set without cameras, without crew, without any work pressure. He basically ordered them to become friends. They went to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in New York, talked about their lives, their marriages, their fears about the film. They shared deeply personal stories about loss and love. Swayze talked about his relationship with his wife and how he understood Sam's devotion. Moore opened up about her insecurities as an actress and her fear of not being good enough for a leading role. When they came back to set 48 hours later, the chemistry was completely there. Everything you see on screen, all that believable intimacy and connection, came from that concentrated bonding period. Moore later revealed in interviews that Swayze told her something incredibly personal during that dinner, something about his childhood that made her see him as a real, vulnerable person. Instead of just a famous co-star, she never revealed what he told her, saying it was too private, but she said it changed everything about how she approached their scenes together. Number 5. The movie was filmed completely out of sequence, and the final goodbye scene was actually shot first, before anything else. Swayze and Moore had to play the emotional goodbye between Sam and Molly before they'd filmed any of the scenes showing them falling in love, living together, or building a relationship. The director did this intentionally and somewhat controversially because he wanted raw, vulnerable performances that were unclouded by the romance they would build throughout the production process. He wanted to capture genuine grief and loss, not performed grief. Both actors said it was the hardest scene they'd ever filmed in their entire careers because they had no emotional foundation to draw from, no shared history with their characters. They were essentially strangers trying to play soulmates saying goodbye forever. Swayze cried real tears during that first take, tears that came from thinking about his own wife and imagining losing her. Those are the actual tears you see in the finished film. The director never told them to do another take because he knew they'd captured something unrepeatable. Moore said she felt like she was drowning emotionally during that scene, reaching for feelings that didn't exist yet. But that rawness, that desperate quality in her performance, came from genuinely not knowing how to access the emotion. Sometimes the best performances come from struggle. Number 4. The screenwriter wrote Ghost after his mother died from cancer, and the entire film is essentially a love letter to her. He was struggling with overwhelming grief and wanted to explore the idea that love continues after death in a way that felt real, and not just wishful thinking. The character of Sam is partially based on the screenwriter's father, who died of a heart attack when the screenwriter was only 12 years old. He'd spent his whole life wondering if his father's love still existed somewhere, somehow. The famous line where Sam tells Molly, "The love inside, you take it with you," came directly from something his mother said on her deathbed. 3 days before she passed, she told him that love was the only thing that survives beyond the physical world, that it's the one thing death can't destroy. He'd been carrying that exact line in his head for 8 years before he finally found a story worthy of using it. He said writing Ghost was therapeutic in a way that years of grief counseling never achieved. It allowed him to process his belief that his parents' love for him still existed even though they were gone. When the film became a massive success, he dedicated it to his mother's memory. He said she would have loved the pottery scene because she was a sculptor. Number 3. There's a continuity error in the pottery scene that no one caught until the movie was already in theaters playing to sold-out crowds. During that famous sequence, Molly's clay-covered hands are completely clean in one specific shot, then suddenly dirty with clay again in the very next shot. It's jarring if you know to look for it. The error happened because they filmed the pottery sequence over 2 separate days, a week apart, and the continuity supervisor forgot to match the clay coverage exactly between the 2 shooting days. By the time the editors noticed the mistake during post-production, it was far too late to reshoot anything. The actors had moved on to other projects. The set had been torn down. Reshooting would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and delayed the release. The studio made the decision to leave the error in the final cut and waited nervously to see if audiences would notice and complain. For the first few months, no one said anything. The scene was too emotionally powerful for anyone to care about Demi Moore's hands being inconsistently dirty. Eventually, eagle-eyed viewers started pointing it out, and it became one of those famous movie mistakes that film students study. But it never hurt the film's success. Sometimes the emotion of a scene is so strong that technical perfection doesn't matter. Number 2. Patrick Swayze nearly turned down the role of Sam because he genuinely didn't think he could play a ghost convincingly. He was known for intensely physical, masculine roles in movies like Dirty Dancing and Roadhouse, films where his body and his presence were the entire point. The idea of playing someone powerless, invisible, unable to affect the physical world felt completely wrong to him. He thought it would expose his limitations as an actor. He told the director no at least twice. His wife Lisa Nemi read the script after he'd already declined, and she told him in no uncertain terms that it was the best role he'd ever been offered in his entire career. She said playing vulnerability and emotional depth would show a range that action movies and dance films never could. She basically told him he was being an idiot for turning it down. Swayze accepted the part but remained terrified throughout the entire filming process that he was making a career-ending mistake. He had nightmares about the film being released and audiences laughing at him. When he finally saw the finished film at the cast and crew screening, he cried in the theater. He realized his wife had been absolutely right. Playing Sam allowed him to show emotional depth that audiences had never seen from him before. It became his favorite role of his career, and he said it was the performance he was most proud of when he looked back at his body of work. Number 1. The movie made Whoopi Goldberg, Demi Moore, and Patrick Swayze all cry during the premiere screening. None of them had seen the finished film with the final music, sound design, and color correction. They had only seen rough cuts and individual scenes during production. When the lights came up after the screening ended, all 3 lead actors were sobbing in their seats. Goldberg said she'd never experienced a movie she was in as a regular audience member before, and it destroyed her emotionally. She forgot she was watching herself perform. Swayze admitted he watched his own death scene and forgot he was the actor playing Sam. He was completely absorbed in the story. Moore said she finally understood why the film mattered to people. It wasn't about ghosts or pottery or psychics or special effects. It was about love surviving the one thing we all fear most, which is losing the people we care about. And that's why Ghost still makes people cry more than 30 years later. The film taps into a universal fear and offers hope that love is stronger than death. So there you have it. 20 hidden details that change how you see one of the greatest romance films ever made. What's your favorite ghost moment? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into classic movies, I've got a video on the secrets behind The Notebook that will blow your mind. It's on screen now. Click it.